Let's take a look at Business Math B Project 5A page 2. So here we are comparing depreciation methods. So we've got the straight line depreciation method over 5 years, and we've also got MACRS depreciation. And we're going to compare them by filling in some information into both of these tables, and then you'll answer some short answer questions after that. So first, we're going to take a look at the table. Now, I had to shrink this down pretty small to get it to fit on this slide, so I recommend that you pull up this page of the project and have it in front of you as you follow along with this video. So you're filling in the missing information here. We'll start with the straight line depreciation over 5 years table, and we'll look at the depreciation column. So remember, straight line depreciation means that there's going to be a linear or a constant loss of value over time. So in the first year, we depreciate by $12,000. In the second year, we depreciate by $12,000 again. So remember that for straight line depreciation, our depreciation is consistent over the years. So it stands to reason, again, because this is straight line method, this is going to be different for MACRS. Because we're using our straight line method, we know that depreciation is consistent. So if it's $12,000 in year 1 and it's $12,000 in year 2, that means it's going to be $12,000 for all the years listed for depreciation value. Okay, so a linear or a constant depreciation over time. The next column, it's written as D depreciation, and what they really mean is cumulative depreciation. So the running total. If we're losing $12,000 of value each year, what's our running total? So for example, in the first year, we lose $12,000 in value, so that's a total depreciation of $12,000. At the end of year 2, we lose an additional $12,000. At the end of year 2, 12,000 times 2 is $24,000. At the end of year 3, once again, losing $12,000 in value, 12,000 times 3 is what? And so on, 12,000 times 4, 12,000 times 5, to get our cumulative depreciation over time. Now, as our depreciation accumulates, the book value of the item decreases, and our book value is going to be our original cost minus our cumulative depreciation. And you can see that here. For example, the original cost was $70,000. At the end of year 1, we depreciated by $12,000. We had a cumulative depreciation of $12,000, $70,000. So again, this is for year 1, $70,000 minus $12,000 gave us $58,000. For year 2, the cost is the same, right? The original cost will always be the same number. Now our cumulative depreciation was up to $24,000. 70 minus $24,000 is $46,000. So each year our cumulative depreciation will go up by 12, and each year our book value will go down by 12. Okay, as time passes, depreciation accumulates, book value decreases. And that's how you'll use these to fill out the remaining boxes for that table. Now again, that's straight line method. What about MACRS depreciation? Let's look at annual depreciation. For this, our annual depreciation is going to be the original cost of the item multiplied by a fixed percent, and that's going to give us our annual depreciation. So for example here, once again, if we had an original cost of $70,000, they'd give us this fixed percent, 20%. So the original cost, $70,000, multiplied by that fixed percent written as a decimal, gave us our annual depreciation of $14,000, which is written here. And you'll do the same thing for rows 3 and 4. So I'll take my original cost, I'll multiply it by this fixed percent, of course rewritten as a decimal, to get my annual depreciation. For line 4, I'll take my original cost, I'll multiply it by my fixed percent, rewritten as a decimal, and I'll get my annual depreciation. So that's the only thing that's different in the calculation, the actual calculation of annual depreciation. Of course, we would still use the same method to figure out cumulative depreciation. It's just last year's cumulative depreciation plus this year's. So, looking at this column, if this year we depreciated $14,000, it was the first year, so that's our total. The next year, an additional $22,400, so we take last year's, we add it to this year's, 14,000 plus 22,400 gave us this 36,400. So once you're able to fill in this box, you'll be able to say, okay, well, then 36,400 plus whatever you got here must be equal to 49,840. Same thing with this box. Once you get this one, you'll be able to add that to last year's accumulated depreciation and get this year's, and so on. Okay, so you will have to kind of work that in tandem as you go down. And then of course book value works the same way here as well, taking the original cost and subtracting off your accumulated depreciation. Now once you get these filled out, they have a couple questions they ask you. The first of which is, which depreciation method shows greater book value for the van at the end of each year? You'll figure that out simply by looking at the book value column for each method and comparing. And when you look at these numbers, which one shows a greater book value? Next they ask, during which year of MACRS depreciation was annual depreciation the greatest? So again, you'll have to get that column filled out first, this column filled out first, and once it's filled out, you'll simply scan through it and look for the year in which you got the greatest annual depreciation. And that doesn't include this bottom piece. That's just the total. Okay, so looking at the actual data for years 1 through 6. Next, you're asked, during which year was depreciation the least? So again, going to that column and finding the lowest depreciation value over those 6 years. Why doesn't MACRS show salvage value for the van? I think that should say. So if we look at it, I think they are referring to why doesn't it show salvage value for the van? I can't explain this one without actually giving away the answer. So just think about how salvage value works with the straight line method. Why doesn't MACRS show salvage value for the van? Think it over. Again, I'm looking for just a reasonable response. It's okay if it's not like perfect according to the book. And finally, which style of depreciation would you use and why? And once again, there's not necessarily a correct answer, right? We have two different methods for a reason. I'm simply just looking for maybe 2 complete sentences explaining your view of which method makes more sense and is more reasonable. You could even use a specific example because maybe you think that in different industries it makes sense to use different methods. I don't know. So again, just looking for a full and reasonable response there. And that is it for this page of the project.